worries.
Okay, I call this meeting to order. Will staff please do the roll call?
Jessica Lemcool,
Here.
Andrew Stump,
Here.
Luke Westacher,
Here.
Morgan White,
Here.
Kavender Patel.
Here.
Next is the approval of the minutes as it's been distributed to the community. Are there any corrections to the April 2025 minutes?
No.
If not, can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
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 So approved. So now we can open the floor to public input. So if anyone wants to come up to the mic and talk, now is a good opportunity to. If not, we can move on to presentations. So the first presentation is the carbon should be dioxide monitors presentation. So yeah.
Should I move up to you?
Yeah.
Someday in your life, look up how to embed a font inside PowerPoint. I learned it once, but I don't remember.
Try opening it in another application, be my recommendation. Yeah, that'll work. And then you can do full screen.
All right, so our organization is Common Sense, and we're a student-led organization with the mission of building a network of carbon dioxide and environmental sensors across the Champaign-Urbana area. So we started as a group of Urbana high schoolers in last fall, and then we've been working throughout the year to bring this project towards our goals. So. Cool.
All right, so like Colin said, the project, this is Colin, by the way, Colin, Jackson, Pablo, and Miles. We're all rising juniors or seniors at Urbana High School. The project was initially established as a way to measure carbon dioxide levels, particulate matter levels, temperature and relative humidity levels throughout certain areas of Champaign-Urbana, and it was aimed to be lower density than anything that is currently measuring air quality in the area. It's easily scalable, and all of the designs are ours, and everything is aimed to be open source. So. Like this model here, this 3D designed sensor case is fully designed by Miles here, and our software is all built on existing open source code. Yeah. And we are it's aimed to be high accuracy, real time, and dense, and with applications for research and climate policy making. and it is also cost effective.
Okay. So the way the network works is we have a bunch of nodes, which are our individual sensors. These are what measure stuff like temperature, humidity, and CO2 levels. And each one is, they're part of a bigger mesh network. So each one can take a measurement and send it, but also relay messages from other nodes. So that means that you don't have to have each one connected to Wi-Fi. They can be off the grid completely, and they have an installed solar panel, which means they can be left without they don't need to be charged or have frequent maintenance done on them. And then they all route these messages to one node, which will upload it to an MQTT server, which further uploads it to our database. Yeah.
So me and Pablo were in charge of finding the relative spots for the nodes, and okay. Sorry. So ideally, they're going to be 1 mile apart, maybe closer, because that's their effective range of transmission. But how it works in the mesh network is we could have the central node, and then we can have the 1 mile away, and then it can grow out from there up to, I think the max is 7 miles. Okay. Line of sight isn't necessary, but it can help, so that frees up some restrictions. We can go more places with it. There's going to be multiple mount designs. Can I see the? So we're thinking about putting a mount right here to attach it to poles and stuff, but of course it can vary based on where we decide to mount it. And then we're going to place our goal is to place it in a variety of areas where we get different readings, and we can use those readings to form a map of the high density carbon areas and the low density carbon areas, and see what the differences are.
All right, so there's a wide variety of applications of something of this, for a project of this kind. Traffic, the stuff listed on here is only a start. I know there was, if you're thinking of specific incidents, I think there was an incident earlier last year in Decatur with the ADM plant. Carbon wells were leaking for an unknown period of time, and something like this could mitigate carbon leakage. I know carbon wells aren't permitted in this city, I'm pretty sure, but there's traffic trends, we can test the absorption of forests and urban parks, and target areas of traffic and seasonal trends as well.
We can also use it to test how much the bike to school and walk to school programs are doing. We can map out how successful they are and how much that happens, along with, it's not its intended design, but it was brought to our attention that this could be used to track CO2 levels inside of buildings as well, and that could provide better quality for workers.
So I can give a brief synopsis of our timeline. We originally started with the idea in August of 2024, and we researched different kinds of chip sensors that we could use, and after we purchased them, we started testing them with trying to get them hooked up to a computer, and then beginning around the turn of the year, in January, we hand-coded modules for a program called Meshtastic. This program allows small devices to communicate with each other, something called IoT or IoT, Internet of Things. The vice president of Meshtastic has also been in correspondence with us because he's seen our work. But we spent most of our time developing the back end for this. Turns out it's not as easy as you might think to get the data from this into the cloud. We had to route it through different small computers, Raspberry Pis. We had to route it through a Raspberry Pi and then finally get the Raspberry Pi to upload it to the cloud. But it has been a functional system since late April, and we actually we're actually working with this now after we presented it to the University of Illinois, and we have professors from the NCSA, Civil, Environmental, Agricultural, and Biological Engineering departments interested. We don't have a full fleet yet because we need to get some research funds to build more of them.
So we were hoping to work with the city on both like the permits for installing these in certain areas, and also like finding areas that these would be like test beds for. In addition, we would like to coordinate like a volunteer effort to assemble and deploy these, and figure out how we could use this data or provide this data to the city as well. So like making an API for people to just pull the data very easily and use it for their research would be a thing we could work with the city on. Yeah.
And this is the end of the presentation. This is just some photos of some proposed maps and pictures of our designs and what the actual sensor chip looks like, or the board chip, and then I think that's it. Yeah. Do you all have any questions?
I think first I just want to say it's really cool. This is so amazing that you all did this. So that's like my initial, I'm just really inspired by you, and I think it's really great that you're doing what you're doing. I guess one question I have is, how much does it cost for each one of the sensors?
So right now the node cost is anywhere from, it depends on which chips we put in, because we're still trying to run certain baseline tests. But I think the cost is around $50 to $100, which is relatively cheap for nodes of this type. Of course, we could use the university's resources to attach bigger, more powerful non-chip sensors, but that would definitely bring the cost up. But $50 is roughly nothing in the sensor operations.
And then another question I have is just like, the elements in terms of rain and all that, like how durable are they for the cost?
Miles, do you want to come up here and talk about that?
Currently, they're just being 3D printed, so I can design them to be, pretty weatherproof. You could like put seals and stuff, but also hydrophobic or water repelling spray that we could apply it, after assembly. There's lots of ways to seal it, and the plastic we're using is PETG. It's very durable and, doesn't break down in the elements. They're, shockproof. So it would be totally, it's very durable.
Yeah, additionally, the sensors are placed opening on the bottom so that, and there's a small little shroud, I don't know the exact term for it, but it will try and prevent water particles from entering the sensors when they are operational.
Can you talk or recite what all the parameters that this is measuring currently?
This will measure carbon dioxide, particulate matter of 1 micron, particulate matter of 2.5 microns, and particulate matter of 10 microns. I think it's 10, or
But PM at 3 levels anyway.
yeah, 3 levels of PM and relative humidity and temperature.
And why did you select those parameters versus other parameters?
We were interested in the emissions coming from cars. And we were actually honestly interested in if measuring CO2 would be a good idea, because we were interested in writing a paper with the university on the usefulness of CO2 measurements, and we can always outfit our sensors with different chips, such as an AQI, a basic AQI chip, NO2, any chip.
And do different parameters have like wildly different, production costs, or is it kind of the same? Everything is an extra $5 per unit or something like that?
No, different parameters do have different costs. For example, our particulate matter sensor is pretty bulky, not too bulky, but it is way bigger than our carbon dioxide sensors, and because it has a fan inside that blows air I think it sucks in the air and then measures it with a laser. So it is more costlier. Yeah.
And you're saying the particulate matter sensor is in that little
Yes.
Node?
Yes,
Or-
it is not. We actually didn't have it with us because our current ones are being tested on breadboard right now before we have to put them in here. But it is it fits right in this central area. We used computer assisted design with a precision. What do you call it? Precision caliber to measure the exact dimensions of it to ensure that it fits.
So you said you have it's working now. It's actually installed now, or is it just you have all the back end is working?
The back end is working for our breadboard sensors, and we're looking to, before we put sensors up in certain areas, we want to work with the city to make sure that we are allowed to put stuff up in these areas. Of course, we can have like trials in our front yard, but we would need to order some more parts for that.
And how might these attach in the field?
We were thinking on poles because they're so common, but the mount options are really there's a lot of different ones. I don't know if Miles, you have something specific to. Oh,
Is it just on?
Is that on?
No.
So currently design is, still very early, waiting on like parts and stuff to make further modifications. But we could have, like he said, we could attach it to poles. I was thinking also bus stops are good locations, like the covered ones, because there's lots of good airflow and they're very protected from the elements. So there'd be good consistency, and also, there are many options we could put on buildings, like sides of buildings. It's just whatever the scenario calls for and where we want to put it.
I think it's also good to note that they don't need grounded power, so it provides for much more flexibility and it's location specific. So like the university might, if we were establishing it there, we might have permission to put it on different areas than we would at the city because we'd have to talk with different people.
In addition, if you're wondering like how specifically it was mounted, we were thinking of like 3D printing like a mounting bracket and then several different mount types that we'd mount to different like objects depending on their shape and size and whatever. So that would make it very modular and easy to place.
I think the folks who own the assets and maintain the assets that you might be attaching to are going to ask that question. And how does this proposal not cause wear and tear, essentially? So if there was some rustable piece, that's going to put a rust stain down the side of the pole, okay, that's maybe problematic. If it can be, a plastic or something like that, obviously that's probably not going to scratch or rust, but then you have to consider, like, is UV going to destroy it and it's going to fall off in a year? So I think there's some interesting questions around that.
Do you know if you could connect it straight to like a hard line? Does it have to be, like, I guess I'm wondering, as far as getting it into ultimately the cloud, if there was an application where there was a plug to the internet, would you be able to connect it that way, or is it a totally different, like, you have to re-engineer it?
So unfortunately, the chip we're using, which is the ESP32, doesn't support LAN or Ethernet, but it does have Wi-Fi support, so you can connect it to any Wi-Fi network in the area, and the data can be routed to that node. So you can have multiple gateway nodes that are connected to Wi-Fi that for like reliability and redundancy. Yeah.
Yeah, what the mesh network does is it finds the shortest possible path to transmit the data to the certain area. Right now, it could either be on Raspberry Pis or straight from the node.
If you're talking about on campus, I think I mentioned it to you guys when I saw you before, but you do want to talk to technology services because there's some limitations about mesh networks on campus because of some of our lock features. And also, can you share who within these academic departments you were talking with?
Yeah, we had a meeting with Professor Vladimir Kindratenko of the NCSA, and we have reached out. He has referred us to Professor Chris Tessum and Professor May Tessum for further meeting, but we are still waiting to hear back from them.
I know that as far as the installations and the idea of installations with volunteers, there are on occasion problems with there's expectations about the union employees, like people in unions have agreed upon, like the public entities have agreed to work specifically with the unions on certain situations. So it's usually something that needs to be worked through once you've identified like which things to attach it to. I think I'm very interested in like getting one for my house. So I think you could really do hey, does anyone in Urbana want to buy one of these and put them in their own yard in some fashion? Because I mean, we could do that, and we could help encourage people to do that. So you could get it not just in the 5 yards that you guys have, but the other ones that people like us have. So it'd be interesting to see that. And also you have this suggested map. And I think, I don't know how you picked those locations. Are those like actually thought out?
So it was Pablo mostly, and I helped a little bit. But basically what we were looking for is a big variable of locations, so they weren't all the same. So we have many different factors influencing all the locations. We have some downtown, we have some, I think, in parks. And so the goal is to see where is like the most CO2 gathering, and like where is like surprising that it's like not, and what are they doing that's causing it to not, and how can we replicate that elsewhere?
And initially, when establishing a baseline for these sensors, it would be important to have some of these locations. We could even water it down to make sure that they're actually measuring rates that they're supposed to, and they're not wildly varying within certain proximities.
It might be worth reaching out to like the public health department to see if there's some parameter that is of interest to them from a public health angle. I couldn't speculate on what it might be. I think PM sounds like a good one. Temperature is interesting from the sense of, you know, how we plan roadway networks and how much pavement there is, and how we plan street trees that shade that pavement really has a big impact on you know, land surface temperature, where you're going to be monitoring. And so that kind of plays into decisions that cities make. So that's an interesting one to me, but there might be some other parameter that I don't know about that's of concern to public health authorities.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at this map, it looks like you maybe stopped short of where the hospital is, and I think that'd be a place where they'd be very interested. So you could reach out to like the Carl Complex and see if they would like to fund and support installing them all across all of their sites, like all of the county sites, I think that, or more. It's the kind of thing they might be able to actually have money for, while, you know, the rest of us are all just trying to find where the money is. And the park districts. So I don't know if you've talked, how many different groups you've talked with already, but I know the park districts care about these kinds of things as well, so help connect you with that.
Yeah, this was a very preliminary map, and as we mentioned before, the scalability of this is one of the big factors of it. And we discussed like a little bit, not a whole bunch, but about connecting with other schools in different areas and cities, like who have clubs sort of similar to this, where they could replicate it easily because of the scalability and how it's open source.
I know connectability issues might pose a problem, but approaching it from a climate justice lens might be interesting too, and seeing how different neighborhoods across Champaign and Urbana have different air quality, and even just looking at like PM and stuff like that. I think that would be very interesting, probably to public health.
I was gonna say, it's a really neat project, and glad you were trying to push this out across the city. I can check and see, we have 2 research sites, one's in Mahomet and one's near Monticello, and we're measuring CO2 from the soil a couple different ways. So if you want to like check or have a site out there to check your instrument, I can see if you can install them out there. One's in a restored prairie and one's in an ag field. So you got different measurements.
I'd like to, go ahead.
Do you want to go ahead first, Morgan? Okay. I was just going to say, I'm kind of in agreement with Scott that I could see like the mounting being like the big, you know, hang up, right? It's like my husband just nagging at me about holes in the walls, you know? But I feel like maybe even zip ties around poles, like, is that not secure enough? Will people mess with them? I mean, that's something that you could at least take it down, fix it, put it back up. It's not touching anything. It's not hurting anything. You know, I'm just thinking about, even if you started with all of the school locations in Urbana, like the middle school is right on that street where there's constantly just cars out there. You know, it would be so interesting to see what it is out there. There's poles that are already out there, you know? And another thing that I was really thinking about is something that has come up in this meeting before is there's like this tree map that they use to, I don't know, plant the city trees or whatever. And I feel like this would be a really useful thing to kind of look at, if you haven't already, when you're picking your sites, because that might be a way that you can kind of just take a different view, especially when we're talking about CO2 and stuff. So this is an amazing project and super cool. Obsessed.
We did talk a little bit about mounting, like amongst ourselves, that was like a big issue. And the issue with zip ties, and an issue we've come across a little bit, is that it doesn't look, because presentation's a big thing. If it doesn't look official, then people might like mess with it, tamper with it, and that would like take down parts of the network, especially if several nodes are sending to like that node that are sending back, and that one gets like jostled or destroyed because someone thought it would be a funny little prank to like take off these zip ties, or even if they thought they were just cleaning up the city. The thing is, it has to like look like it all goes together.
I'm with you on that. And, you know, the bummer about it is you probably can't put them up way high so that people can't mess with them, right? Because you need them like where the people are walking. I don't know if maybe there are some, I feel like there's some metal like clamp type. I don't know. I'm just thinking like maybe something that you don't actually have to drill in, because also like I could see that taking a lot of time and energy. A lot of our poles are made of metal or like stone, so that could be problematic.
I'm sure Miles knows more about this, but I don't think we were planning on doing any drilling. I think we were going to 3D print like a clamp, correct, that goes around, that mounts it?
Yeah, we were gonna 3D print like a custom like mounting bracket, and then depending on the situation, we'd have to have some kind of thing attached to the pole. So that would either be like some kind of metal ring, or it would really depend on the situation. But yeah.
I'm curious about the height point that Jessica brought up. So what height do you expect these to be at?
So actually, Dr. Kindretenko brought this up as well, and he said we should, before we deploy these like in a larger scale, we should do like control tests with different heights in certain areas, and so that would be our first order of business when we're testing deployment.
Yeah, because especially with if we're measuring primary, or if we're measuring vehicles, vehicle emissions, you'd think that the carbon dioxide would kind of spread out as we get over the building, the like average building height. So we'd have to do some trials with that. Additionally, with Professor Kindred-Tanko, we were looking into something where a security or a camera scans cars and tries to give like an estimate of emission per car, and per second it's in the frame, or give it a time it's in the frame and what type of car it is to calculate emissions, and then compare that to some sort of device like ours and at different heights as well, to see if emissions are congruent or different.
I was going to say, this has come up as a question about whether this kind of information is available for our community. So, and the answer's been, well, not really. So it would be really great once you have accomplished getting it out and running, and then can we please have all the data? And also, I would love to hear, how it's going in the future.
How fast does it take measurements?
So the minimum measurement frequency is 30 minutes. That we'd likely go a bit higher to save on power, but it would really depend on like what our controls look like. So we'd probably do varying measurement frequencies to see if we get better patterns at certain frequencies.
But you could increase it if you wanted to.
Yeah, I could increase it faster than 30 minutes, but it would,
Okay.
yeah. Mhm.
I was just thinking, like, if you put it on MTD bus route, and then you could just get live feeds throughout all of Urbana. That would just be interesting, and then it would all be calibrated to the same device, and, yeah.
I forgot to ask whether you
These
can
two.
connect it to a cell network or a cell modem. If you can connect the instrument to a cell modem. So some of our sites, research sites, we transmit data from the site from using a cell modem.
We'd have to explore that, I think, a bit.
So the current way we have it is we just have like a web server that it uploads the data to. So if you have internet access at each point, I mean, it should be able to upload to that server. Yeah.
And to elaborate on the MTD thing, there is another project that exists primarily in Europe, I think, but you can buy their units that does carbon dioxide monitoring primarily from vehicles. I don't know how widespread it is or how recently it's been updated, but when we were looking at, when we were starting to brainstorm for this project, we did come across that. And yeah, if you were interested in something like that.
Are there any more questions?
I'd like to ask, if we were to go about placing these things, what would be the steps you'd recommend, and like who to contact on permission to place in different locations?
You'd probably want to start at Public Works and ask about a right-of-way license or some sort of license agreement.
Thank you.
Would we have to be a non-profit for profit to do that, or would we have to be an organization? How would that?
There just needs to be some responsible person or organization. The format is not particularly specified.
I think that they're going to want to know where you want to put them, because that's going to be a big deal. And Public Works would be approving things that are for city. Like, they wouldn't be involved in whether or not they can do it at the Park District, for example. Is that right? Or I don't know.
That's correct.
Okay. So it's, having the map of where you want them to go in order to have the conversation to get the permitting from all the various jurisdictions that you'll need to talk to. The schools, I think, might be separate from the city, the private residents. There's all kinds of, it's not secret, but it's complicated.
You might as well talk to Public Works before you decide, traffic lights versus street lights, because they may have an opinion about, why it's not a good fit for one or the other, and you don't want to have to, undo a bunch of work you've already done planning for that.
Again, I just wanted to say thank you. This was super interesting, and I'm just amazed.
Thank you guys for having us to present.
Yeah, thank you.
Great job. Do you want to present in various other places, potentially? Okay, I'll try to connect with you with some ideas.
So next is staff report.
Good evening. A few updates. We have launched another round of our bulk purchase program for geothermal heating and cooling installations, Geothermal Urbana Champaign. We've had one in-person power hour and one Zoom power hour, with another Zoom power hour being scheduled. Related to geothermal, I see the school district has I think it's a 6th grade center under construction that has geothermal wells that were being or maybe have finished installation now. And the city is moving forward with, I don't know, maybe halfway through construction of 2 fire stations that both have geothermal well loop fields already drilled. And so those facilities will be geothermal powered as well. I have an update on our second landfill solar development. We extended the lease option period on that, and the developer does believe they're going to be putting everything in place to convert the lease option into a long-term lease before it is expired. So that should happen sometime next year. And so this will be another, don't know for sure yet, but some number of acres, maybe maybe 2 or 4 megawatts of solar on our closed landfill. So that'll be fenced off area that the developer will produce renewable energy, maintain the vegetation, and pay taxes on. That particular portion of the landfill would become taxable, and then pay a lease rate as well to the city. So a lot of good things stacked together on that project. You probably got letters that our municipal electric aggregation program is suspended for the moment. We solicited pricing for a successor contract at the end of, before our term ended, and we were not able to secure favorable pricing. So all the accounts are being returned to the default electricity supply option called Basic Generation Service, provided through Ameren. And at that point, folks have options. They can stay on Basic Generation Service. If they stay for 2 months, they'll be locked in for another 10 months. They can choose a different retail electric supplier, or they can choose a community solar subscription. So there's some options there. Folks should consult the state website called Plug-in Illinois, which posts the Basic Generation Service price.
Scott, do you know the date of those 2 months? Or is everybody getting switched at the same day, or is it
There's
different for
about a
different people?
dozen different meter read dates.
Okay.
So people are getting letters
your own
already,
materials.
yeah. U-Cycle, the city's recycling service, has new vendors for both the multifamily collection and the curbside collection. The curbside collection is basically the same, but there is a different type of truck making that collection. In fact, 2 different trucks, depending on whether someone has the larger 2-wheeled flip-top cart, which is what we buy and distribute nowadays, or the very old small open-top bin. There's new staff, new equipment, and with all of that learning curve, the system has experienced a higher than normal rate of missed collections. So we're working through that with the city vendor and working to send them back around and make those collections. And so there's an online reporting form folks can fill out if they have a missed collection, or they can call Public Works.
Have there been any issues with using the mechanical arm so far? Anything you've heard about?
Occasionally, there is a call about some recycling material found to have been spilled out. Not necessarily people seeing it happen, but that seems to be the case. That's also something that has happened in the old system where there was labor that picked up a can and tipped it into the back of a rear-loading Packer truck. So it's different, but also just a different way of the same sort of thing that happens from time to time. Certainly on the edge of town on a windy day, that's probably more likely where that might happen. So I don't know that it's better or worse, just a little, just a different pathway.
Do you know if the mechanical arm requires a specific orientation of the bin? Because I was wondering that.
Yeah, we ask, and the vendor asks that folks place the cart face out, wheels towards the house. They're still picking it up and tipping it otherwise, but I suspect that the way the lid opens in that orientation helps keep the materials going down the hopper. We also ask that carts are placed a few feet, 3 or 4 feet from other obstructions like cars, traffic signs, trees, so that claw can grab them.
There was a day that it was raining, and I haven't seen the claw like pick it up yet, but we place it correctly and all that. And when I went to get the cart later, it was open, and the whole neighborhood, they were all open, and it had been raining in it, which was interesting. And I thought, is that part of the machine methodology? I don't know, but I was kind of curious if it's usually open, but I only noticed because it was raining and because normally someone else brings the cart back. So.
It's probably not intentional. It may be that the angle the arm comes down, the direction of the wind may flip open or keep the lid open.
Yeah, because we are on the edge of town, so that makes sense.
I haven't noticed ours open, but we did get our first little notice because there was a car parked in front of it. So that would explain. I was like, how has this never happened that we've gotten one of these little orange tags? Because I'm sure we're not following all the rules all the time. So, yeah, that would explain.
Do you happen to know how many boreholes there are in the 6th grade center for the school district? Did you find out?
I do not.
Just wondering. It's a lot. I saw, there's a lot, in a good way.
Anything else? Okay, then we can move on. So next is unfinished business. We have discussion of SAC's role. So we've left this under unfinished business. So every month we can talk about it if there are any other things that people want to bring up.
I'd like to bring back the Champaign County Environmental, invite them back sometime relatively soon. I understand they're still working towards the hazardous waste facility, and they're also talking about composting and what the opportunities are there. We've talked about it before, but the last time they were here, I wasn't here, but I think it was a long time ago. I think it was like 6 or 9 months ago. So like, if we could invite them, just when it works out.
Okay, if there's nothing.
I have one other thing. So there was a sustainability grant that the city did one time. Do we know if they're going to do it again? I don't remember what it's called, like Sustainability in Urbana.
I was actually wondering about this because it's a long story, but we were at Common Sense, we were looking to apply to this grant, but we were like about 3 days past the deadline, and I think we emailed the city asking if it would be reinstated, and they didn't give us a clear answer.
That was established in a budget process. So I think you'd want to look at, the next budget making cycle, next budget, and see.
I haven't been asked to review anything since then, so assuming that.
Anything else? If not under new business, we have discussion of recycle coach. So I don't know if Andy, you want to talk about this at all, or this was the thing Stacy forwarded? Yeah.
I think it was just whether the city wanted to become part of the network of cities that are part of it, I guess. And
Yeah.
they needed so many entities to register, I guess. That was my understanding.
Let me pull this up.
I was gonna say, was that in the packet? I didn't get to the end of the packet.
No, it's not in the packet. So basically, it's the Illinois EPA, and it's this recycle coach for the city that I believe helps people figure out what's recyclable and things like that, and ways to recycle things and what to do with certain things. But we need to like try and enroll the whole city, and we can invite people to talk about it if that's something we want to move forward with.
I think the question is, is there some value add and at what cost? When I look at what it purports to offer, that seems like what we do. We have a very robust web presence with a ton of information far beyond just what our service is and what we collect in the can, but a constantly updated list of other places you can drop off other things in the community that people call and ask about.
Scott, so what I'm hearing is that it didn't look like it would add something to the city staff, like it wouldn't help with the work that you're doing.
I can.
Was there any other benefit to it other than us helping others? Which, I mean, if you're going to be the leader, which we are, people are going to ask us to help them, and then we're like, but we're trying to do stuff.
I could imagine a city or village that has a franchise agreement where in everything about recycling is done by the hauler, and they sign the village signs the contract, and that's the last they ever hear of it. This would plug in well because it's sort of a package of public engagement that they can just bring in. We have a staff person and a pretty robust web presence, so it may not be a good fit for us.
You want to pull up the website? Just recyclecoach.com.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I think that we, as far as I'm concerned, we do have a really great educational system about our recycling. U-Cycle is well known, and I don't personally see gaps in that.
I keep going. There's a specific one. Used to type in Illinois too. That's right.
Is it not just the recyclecoach.com?
Maybe go up a little bit. Sorry. IAPA.
I think the better website is if you go back to the recyclecoach.com. And if you scroll down, there's a page where it like shows how the app works and the website and all of those things.
Yeah, there's a specific one for IEPA. That's why I was. So if you go up to recyclecoach.com /blog/Illinois dash Illinois dot or dash environmental dash protection. Yeah.
I don't know, I don't think we have an app about U-Cycle yet, do we? Is this free?
The state of Illinois has a partnership to make it free for municipalities, is that correct?
I think so, yeah. So they just, from Stacy's email, it just seemed like they needed a number of municipalities to join.
I'm just wondering if, you know, if you could touch base with Courtney and tell us next time if it makes, you know, if it would be helpful. And also, what's your name again? You said new, Davy?
Covey.
Covey, is the, have you ever had to look up what to do with something you want to recycle? And if so, how did you go about doing that?
I don't know. I usually ask my mom.
Yeah.
I mean, there are definitely still people that are not recycling correctly, like in Urbana.
Right.
It's, you know, we're not, I don't think
But-
we've crossed the finish line on it,
But a
for
digital
sure.
sign would be, or, you know, a digital system, whether it's an online website or an app, is not gonna reach those people who aren't doing it anyway, right? It's gonna be for the people who are doing it and wanna know how to do it better.
Yeah, I mean, I think
More
it's
correctly.
this, what we have is great for people that are gonna look up the brochure. You know, I see our brochure, I'm looking at U-Cycle, good information, website for the city, lots of great information on there for people who actually look at
Look.
that,
Yeah,
you know?
maybe the idea of a different version of what it looks like may not be that helpful, but if all the suburbs in Chicago are using it, and then those folks come here to go to school or what have you, and then they stay like they're supposed to stay, then, you know, there's some benefit to having it being consistent. 'Cause you can't look up U-Cycle for what happens in Schaumburg.
I mean, if it's like a free thing, would it hurt to be
Well,
part
it's not,
of U-Cycle?
I mean, it's because it's not free for the staff to deal with implementing it and talking about it and figuring it out and filling it in, and then they're filling in this website and the brochure and the app.
I'm
just
just,
a matter of,
like,
like,
is it something,
is that worth it?
if it marries well with what we're already doing, could it? I don't know. You know, does it push it farther, or do we just do what we've been doing and?
I think it's gonna require staff time, right? Because if it didn't, they could just take our information and put it on their website. They don't need our permission for that. So I don't know that it helps to have the same information in two different places.
It becomes this question of, you know, like everything has an app too these days. Not everything, but lots of stuff does. And I'm old school and I don't like that. But there's some things that are only available on an app, or there's people who don't have I don't know. I don't personally know someone who has a cell phone and not a computer. And even if you do just have a cell phone, you can still see a website. So it's like the next century kind of stuff. Like,
I see the recycling Urbana just popping up. I
I
mean,
mean, I already know where it is, but it was the first result.
yeah, which is great, which is what it should be.
Would we want to have someone come and talk about it? Because I think, especially from even a student perspective, having an app on your phone instead of having to Google things would be a lot easier. Because I know sometimes my hesitation is, like, if I don't know if something's recyclable, I'm not going to look it up and try and figure that out. In the moment, I might just throw it in landfill. Or vice versa, I'm like, oh, I'm pretty sure it's recyclable. But I think having, like, if I had an app that I would just open on my phone and it was there, that would help me.
And to be clear, this is an app that, so pretty much any town that would have it, you could, if I'm at a hotel in Naperville or something, I can just look up and say, is this recyclable here or something? And obviously,
I
Urbana.
gotta say,
Okay.
that sounds like a really far reach, because right here in this town, right, if you are on campus, it's different than if you're at the library, than if you're in a local business, or if you're in the city building.
And then
or
it also
residents.
doesn't take into account the fact that there aren't recycling bins at these places anyway, so, at many places.
Yeah. So So it's like what's recyclable here in this community is still, you know, it's even, everything's like almost everything is recyclable, but do we recycle it here?
Right.
Kind of thing. We're very lucky to have our recycling system though. Because some of the communities I know of, other college towns have stopped recycling outside of Illinois, which is why Illinois is the best, which is why I'm never leaving.
So maybe not invite someone to come talk about it? Does that seem a general consensus?
I'd rather hear,
Okay.
like if we're going to invite them, I'd rather have heard from Scott's conversation with Courtney
Okay.
Kwong about it before, like if we could get that feedback first about like how much staff time, is this burdensome? Is this something that she was dreaming about anyway? That's the recycling guru.
Yeah, that would be really helpful. Like where,
And then after that,
are we feeling
decide.
good? Like, are we feeling like we need more support, something else? That's a really important question, which, you know, obviously you're connected and you know.
I can definitely do that. I think, Luke, you bring up an interesting question, which is, what is the use case for an app versus a website? And I got to think that at least in part, it's about the frequency of engagement. You know, if on my phone, if I don't use an app for a while, it offloads, right? And I have to re-download it. That's an iPhone thing. I don't know if Androids do that. But, you know, if I don't use an app for a while, I forget it's even there. And then my question related to that app, I just go to a web search anyway. And so is recycle, you know, when you move someplace, you might have a lot of questions initially about recycling. But I got to think that tapers off pretty substantially after a while versus, you know, your favorite social media app, you're hitting that every day, right? There's a lot of engagement there. So I think that's one way to think about it. But then, you know, the staff time is a real serious consideration because there's not any to spare. But we'll follow up.
And I just had one thought, kind of going back to the old business of, if that's allowed, just a quick jump back and trying to honor people's time. But, you know, what is our purpose, right? And that's kind of what we've been talking about. Would it be something that we want to do or could be doing, should be doing to like go to one of these Illinois EPA workshop type things? Is that something SAC members have done in the past? Would that be fruitful for us or other conferences? I don't know. That's just something that when we brought up the EPA, that made me think of it. So.
I have found that there is a lot of very, very, very useful information online. My favorite place to go is YouTube and watch like conferences about sustainability on YouTube that they've publicized. And then I think the most important thing that, like, I guess just as a implementer, I think the most important thing is finding the funding. And so if SAC members were willing to like dig into what are these financial opportunities, what grants are out there? Are there grants for carbon monoxide sensors? Are there grants for trees? And then helping to, you know, figure out what that grant could do for our city and whether we qualify, and then helping to write the grant. Like those kinds of things I think are something we could do that would really make a difference. I understand there's a lot of green rainwater infrastructure programs that our community, like our local area hasn't gone after very much yet. It's like for rain gardens from other entities and things like that. I guess I'm not really the right one to ask about conferences themselves, though. Andy does those more than I do. You go to them more than I do.
That came to mind. I love the grant. I love the grant idea as well. I mean, that's definitely a great idea.
Okay, if there's nothing else, then we can adjourn. So this meeting is adjourned.
It was nice to meet you all.
Yeah, nice to meet you too.
The program for all of our whole county.
I think, my impression was any municipality can just
Like the
use
ones
it.
like in our neighborhood,
They have
they have
I thought.
the metal rings.
Because the EPA
for
paid
the-
for it, but I might